no matter how corrupted you have been, no matter how lost you possibly are, you are not a leaf blowing in the autumn winds. You are the trunk of the tree, and you're well rooted, and you come from a place of extraordinary possibilities. I mean, I watch people reverse stage 4 cancers, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, mental illness, easy things like heart disease and diabetes. They're not even diseases. These things should go away in very short order.
Welcome to the 100-Year Lifestyle Podcast, dedicated to you and your loved ones living at 100% for 100 years and beyond. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Plasker. Welcome, everybody, to the 100-Year Lifestyle Podcast. Yes, we are transforming health and longevity consciousness worldwide so that you and your loved ones can live at 100% for 100 years and beyond. And hey, we got a special guest today, a good friend of mine from Hippocrates Health Institute. He's the director over there. He's a PhD in nutrition. Dr. Brian Clement, my friend, thanks for joining us.
So good to be with you today.
Yeah. So, hey, listen, we spent some time together, right? We've shared the platform in Florida. We've shared the platform in Georgia. I'm sure we're going to share it a lot more down the road. It's been great getting to know you.
Well, you know, I think why our friendship was kindled up is because you are passionate about what you do. And I don't find that with most of my colleagues and peers here in North America and around the world. Most people are in the business of health. You're in the business of passion. And that's why we get along, I'm sure. And so I honor you and respect you. And it's not just words you're saying. We should live at 100% for 100 years. We scientifically can validate it. And that's what we've been doing here at the Institute for 63 years.
We'll talk about that because people have this perception. I think people have a skewed view on longevity. They see their aging parents and grandparents. They say, man, I don't want to be like that. But it's not because of age. There's a lot of things that are being blamed on age, Brian, that have nothing to do with age, but they have to do with things in the environment, interferences that get in the way of the expression of their potential in life. People think that they're living on borrowed time when it's really birthright time, and things get in the way that cause sickness, disease as time goes on. You've seen so much of that. Talk about this from your perspective and enlighten us.
There's so much that comes to my mind. I've got to tame it so that we concisely give you the answer. I think where I first came to a realization that what I was being taught in school and what the consensus was among the public was wrong when I was on an expedition in my 20s to Peru to a tribe that lived commonly well beyond 100. And I talked my way in as a nutritional scientist, and my job was to come out and write about, yes, they eat healthy food and it's good. And I did that, but I really spoke more about what I saw there. The interaction between the men and the women and the equality, the love and respect I saw for children. When the children spoke, there was dead silence and they'd listen to the children.
Beautiful.
It was just something I never experienced, even from my family, which is a loving, supportive, wonderful family. We were pretending compared to them. So here I was seeing people age in my family, my grandparents, even then my great-grandparents, and they were being told by doctors, as doctors still state today, when you have a pain or you're suffering, as you pointed out, you're getting old. There's no such thing as old disease. There is lifestyle problems. And America, because of our greatness, our economics, and our former persona, I wouldn't say it's our persona now, where we led the world, where we were passionate seekers of truth, where we put men on the moon. Because of that, the world followed us in the healthcare realm. And about 15 to 20 years ago, the Europeans first jumped off, and then slowly but surely everyone else, and said, you know, maybe what you're telling everyone, that everything's genetic, is wrong. And that has been scientifically validated today. So the other thing you hear, and I hear this every day from people who come here to the Hippocrates Institute, is my doctor told me after I filled out 5 papers why I got cancer or why I have a heart problem is genetic. That's complete nonsense. Genetics.
Yeah, And I agree with you that it is complete nonsense. And, my dad had a heart attack at 49, and they told me I had heart disease in my family. It was genetic, but my dad smoked for 30 plus years. My dad was 40 pounds overweight, and they blamed the heart attack on his genetics. They passed that along, tried to pass it along. We didn't buy it. They tried to pass it along to us. We said, no, we don't believe that that's true. And here I am, I'm 57 now, about to turn 57, and never had a problem with my heart. Not even
you will never have a problem with your heart.
Right.
You will never have it. I mean, so now the Europeans lead the world, not the Americans anymore. And they are the people who talk about epigenetics. And that's the way you think, the way you eat, the way you exercise, the relationships you're in, the combination of who you are 24 hours a day. And the latest data, if you look at some really great guys on the cutting edge, like Bruce Lipton, that he brings us, these are obscure physicists and scientists that you and I wouldn't hear about, that we now know that the mind can change your DNA in a second. Let me repeat this to you. So what you're being taught at Harvard and Oxford and Cambridge and Stanford is wrong if you become a physician or a doctorate student. They're telling you it takes generations. No, it takes a thought to change the disposition. So now, what does this mean? So how do we age? How do we get sick? It is a personal choice. And I think the first personal choice we have, and this is difficult when you're a young person, is to say, maybe what mom and dad and my society and what I learned in school, I was taught was wrong. That when we age, we don't become decrepit. We don't become sick. We don't have heart attacks. We don't have cancers. That is something that is so embedded in our mind. It's the first thing we have to lift off our shoulders before we're not going to do that.
Right. And there's a fear that comes with that education, that people are afraid of getting older. They're afraid of it. And you talked about thoughts and epigenetics. To translate that into common language, it's the environment around the genes. You talked about the things in your lifestyle. It's the environment around the genes that causes your body to change, including the thoughts, like you said, with the thoughts. So how does living in fear of disease and in fear of infection and fear of all of these things, how does that epigenetically change us?
It gives you a disease. So I have seen hundreds and hundreds of people in my 50 years of work that have created disease from their thought patterns. Now, let me give you the classic story. This goes back 27, 28 years ago. We had a young woman here, 52 years old, and all she would talk about with all of us, the doctors, Anna Maria, the co-director, myself, my wife, the psychotherapist, is my father died at 56 years old and my mother died at 48 years old. And she had tests done here. I ordered tests that I frankly had to call up the laboratories to ask what the tests were. She knew more about testing than I knew about testing. So she got these tests. It was $2,000 our cost. Can you imagine?
Wow.
And they came back impeccable. As a matter of fact, one of my physician friends that helped me interpret one said to me, "You wish you had a test as good as this. This is perfect." Well, now we speed up several years down the road. And a gentleman came here who was a physician at Massachusetts General and reversed liver cancer, a doctor. And he called me and said, "You'll never know, guess who my patient is." And it was this woman. And she was a New Yorker, but she went up to Boston and was being treated there. She couldn't find enough doctors to tell her she was sick, I guess, in New York. So she goes up there, and he said, "I saw her on Thursday, and she came back, and we're going to conduct an autopsy. The distant family, because she had no direct family, are willing to let that happen." And I said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Did you get to know her?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I would run out of the room. The nurses would run out of the room because all she talked about." And she died within a month of her father's demise.
Wow.
So your question is powerful, and I don't want to sound a bit esoteric. I'm going to tell you this is something I've seen clinically here time and time again. But the reverse is true too. Everyone that comes through this program gets psychotherapy. And I think it by far, hands down, is the most important thing we do with people here. To liberate people from their pain, their suffering, and their self-imposed limitations. Let me repeat the last one. self-imposed limitations.
Yeah, I love that.
And when you do that, the immune system, which ultimately is the biological force of why you're well or not well, and why you live a long time or you don't live a long time, is now convinced you finally love it. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what I love when I met you and I started learning about what you do, we are definitely kindred spirits in the way we think about this. I think that's so important that people understand that thoughts are things and thoughts are powerful. And if you change your thoughts, you change everything. And there are people, they'll go from doctor to doctor to doctor, like you talked about, and they'll get a second opinion and a third opinion from the same area, the same specialty, and they come up with the same prognosis and the same diagnosis, and they think that that's the law, that that's the way that it's supposed to be or that it has to be.
Yes.
We had a patient come into our office here that had a big stack of x-rays and tests, and I said, listen, with all due respect, let's just put these aside for a minute, and let's look at you as a person, and let's see what we have to work with, and let's see if we could turn your power on and get you going in the right direction.
I want you to repeat what you just said.
Yeah, we'll turn your power on. Absolutely. And watch, like 30 days later, she's a completely different person.
Of course.
And it's not that I disrespect all of those opinions or that I don't honor the expertises of those opinions, but the reality of it is it wasn't working for her.
But let's dive deep into this. Her lights are out. She goes to doctor after doctor their personal lights are out. They're not impassioned. They don't see people get well. They are crises management doctors. And
yes.
No disrespect for them, but that's what their role is. It's to make sick people pacify. That's it. It's not about recovery. It's not about healing. It's not about the things that we should be talking about. And the fact that you turned her lights on. Now, you didn't make her do anything or be anything she's not and hasn't been, but she sees who she is now.
Yeah, and it goes back to one of the first things that I mentioned here, and you are reiterating it, is that it's not borrowed time, it's birthright time, that you have the blueprint to live to 100 years and beyond, no disease, healthy, functioning at your highest level, if you don't get sick, and if you take care of yourself appropriately and keep your body functioning at the way that it is capable of for all of those years, then that becomes your potential. And, we talk a lot in our office. I know you address it. We talk about these interferences, things that get in the way of the expression of health, the innate expression of health. There's a great article on it on 100yearlifestyle.com. From your perspective, what do you see are some of the most common lifestyle or interferences to normal function, to birthright function, to full expression, that when they come to Hippocrates and change, that they get back on track and naturally, innately begin to express themselves the way they're capable of?
Well, one we just labored over, and by far it's the most important. It towers over everything else, and that's attitude. And then we get to diet. And there's not wide varieties in concept on diet. There's overwhelming data and research that show you that plant-based diets that are organic make you live longer. There's nobody who's a legitimate scientist or a doctor who wouldn't concur with that. It's not a little plant-based and not you have blood type differences. We have for 63 years here with our medical team fed people a plant-based organic diet and basically watched every type of blood type, every type of disease, and every kind of person from all over the world, men, women, boys, girls, etc., be able to heal themselves. So diet is paramount. Now, the problem we have out there, the listeners today, and I struggled with this too, is that moderation, we think we're doing just excellent things. You go to the Whole Food Market as an example, and a bunch of yuppies are driving around their carts there, putting processed food in because it says organic on the side of it. I mean, is it a step in the right direction? Is Beyond Burger a good thing? Yes, better than a hamburger, but the fact is it's still compromise. And we're talking about, why I like working with you is you're not in a moderation mode. You're not telling people, hey, if you live 75 years, be happy. Shut up and be happy. You're saying, the hell with that. I want you to be 100% functioning at 100 years. Now, let me give you some data on this. When we look at diet for this, the 7-day Adventists who have Loma Linda, one of the seven most important medical universities in this country, they showed that on a crappy plant-based diet, all cooked, all processed plant-based diet, the person lives 7 years longer. Now, our initial data, and we haven't done a full-blown study on this, we don't have the economics to do it. But the fact is, we're showing that if you eat an unprocessed organic plant-based diet, uncooked even in great part, including juices and particular plants with the highest phytochemicals, there's at least a 24 to 27 year differential in that. And if you look at the most important study done on longevity, which I'm sure you read and you spoke about to your people, it's called the New England Centurion Study.
Sure.
I mean, what a lamb. And what I was so proud about them, they said, yes, this kind of diet makes you live. Yes, exercise makes you live. But equally important is friendship. Remember that?
Yeah, well, listen, relationships are key. Multiple circles of relationships, multiple generations of relationships is absolutely a key part of the 100-Year Lifestyle message that we put out there. And you brought up the New England Centenarian Study, which it really goes along the line with this entire discussion, because they separated two groups of people that live longer. They had the people that never got sick in the first place, yeah, and then they called them the second chancers. And I always joke around with the audience is which group was the biggest group, the largest group? Was it the people that never got sick or the second chancers?
Right.
And it's the people that never got sick.
Yep.
Those are the highest percentages by far of the people that are living longer, which doesn't mean if you've had a problem or a challenge or an issue that needs to be overcome that you can't get on track to living your ideal 100-year lifestyle, because go do things that they say at Hippocrates and in the 100-year lifestyle, and you can get on track. But talk about that.
To put that in biological perspective, that means their immune system was fully engaged and functional throughout their life. It's not like we make people well, you know that. The best we can do, and we're experts at it here, is we help every aspect of their life, their epigenetics, to boost that immunity. Good attitude, exercise, we'll get to that next. Look at the work that my friend and colleague, Dr. Kenneth Cooper did. He was a skinny, not so good looking runner. Now,
the Cooper Clinic, very famous runner, absolutely.
I don't want to offend runners listening out there, but boy, you guys never look that good. Emaciated, skinny, you get wrinkles. And so he's getting beat up 65, 70 years ago by his medical doctor friends. He's an MD. And he gets angry and leaves medicine and creates a Cooper Center and is the premier researcher on the planet. He pretty much created the science single-handedly of exercise. Now, he has completely changed his tune. I would say completely, that's an exaggeration, but he's dramatically changed his tune. He was advocating running. Now what we learned, talk about longevity, is that if you walk at relatively good pace, not slow, meandering, but look, if you just go out 3 times a week and walk for 5 minutes, you prolong your life by 5.5 years. That's nothing.
Yeah, and it's not just prolonging, right? It's quality of life. Quality of life. And, you talk about the runners, and I'm not a runner. I like to power walk. A lot of my friends are runners, and a lot of my friends eat meat. I will occasionally eat meat, lean quality meat. And so I'm totally with you on what you're saying, though, I must say. And with running, and you look at people and you say, okay, if you're going to do this and you like it and you're not going to stop, then you should at least do all the other things that are good for you to offset those things in your lifestyle. Get adjusted, run on a healthy, balanced spine. Don't run on a crooked, subluxated spine. Keep your nutrition, your diet clean so talk about that a little bit, because there are a lot of people listening, even after they come to Hippocrates, they go back out into their life, they get clean, and then they go back to the habits that got them to be sick in the first place. It's
true. Well, you have to remember there's 2 kinds, or really 3 kinds of addiction. There's substance addiction. Now, you and I, when we hear that, we think of drugs and alcohol. The biggest addiction we have is to sugar. We now know statistically, the data that came out of Princeton is that all forms of sugar, including fruit sugar, is 30 times more addictive than cocaine. So let's start with that. We're fat addicted. I mean, I used to eat, this is not a joke, gallon of ice cream several times a week. We are salt addicted. And ironically, salt and sugar were never used as foods or even spices. That came from preservation of meat and plants. So people would take sugar and cook the vegetables and the fruits that they grew in the garden in the summer and preserve it that way. Salt would be put on the meat because there wasn't refrigeration. So that's how we got this taste for these things. And it became incredibly deeply ingrained in us. The second one, which I didn't figure out until 30 years ago, is the mommy factor. My mother loved me. I knew she loved me. My mother told me meat's good for me. My mother told me, by the way, if I didn't drink milk, my bones would crumble. And then I went to a place called school, and they reconfirmed that. And then I went and got a PhD in nutrition, and the bastards are still confirming.
Yeah, you know, I'm going back to blaming genetics and our parents and our grandparents, and we inherit where we think we're inheriting the genetics that cause diseases and conditions. What we're really doing is inheriting the lifestyle that causes these problems. We inherit the memories that go with the bad foods that are not good for us.
The holiday food.
Exactly.
And the third factor is one that we address deeply here along with the other two, and that's pushing down your emotions. So when I look back when I was an overeater, not only did I eat bad non-food, I ate massive amounts of bad non-food. It was because I didn't want to feel. People start to drink or they take dope, so they really don't feel and they don't see. I just did it with massive amounts of food and bloated myself up to 120 pounds more than I should be, and smoked cigarettes and got stoned on grass every day. You know, this was my lifestyle. And people don't realize that these are the three areas that we have to look at when it comes to why we eat bad non-foods. And why do we compromise? Why do we say, okay, I'm going to eat processed organic food? When you look at data, and let's look at some of the data. There are 3 known facts, even about eating plant-based organic food, that can still give you cancer and heart disease. The first fact goes back to 1930s, and it was a Pasteur Institute, a Russian scientist, discovered a disease state called leukocytosis. As you know, leukocyte is white blood cell cytosis, and cytosis, crippling of it.
Yeah.
Found out that when you literally took an organic plant and cooked it at a high temperature, the body's immune system identifies it like a bad guy and attacks it. So now, why is that bad? Well, you and I, as healthy as we are fighting viruses every day, cancers every day, bacteria every day. How about if my body's over here eating cooked, organic, plant-based food? I'm not thinking about pork chops. And so I'm compromising them. The second thing the Swedes 45 years ago discovered, called acrylamides. And this is amazing. You should look these things up. And they were laughed at. Oh, the world's community said they must be wrong. They're not wrong. They're one of the top, they are probably in Europe, the top science community in Europe. And now it's universally understood. You take organic cereal, cooked organic cereal, that's all cooked at 230, it causes cancer. Not maybe. Now, I'm talking about things most of you don't even do it this well.
Right.
And the last one, listen to this one. The last one we've known since 68 years. I was a little tiny one in 68 years ago. Basically, that you cook any food that has oil in it. Forget cooking the oil. Any food that has oil in it, it's a carcinogen and also contributes to heart disease.
Yeah, and you know, we have a saying in the 100-Year Lifestyle: learn to love the things that are good for you and make them your lifestyle. So that you don't ever feel like you're missing out on anything. And so give us 3 foods that everybody should eat right now. What can they do? 3 great nutritional recommendations.
Okay. The number one that everyone can find and everyone can afford are fresh, raw, green leafy vegetables. That's it. And what we used to call condiments are really more important than you think. Coriander, parsley, watercress. How many of you know watercress has 5 times more calcium than milk does, and milk doesn't give you good calcium? It actually robs calcium.
Robs calcium, yeah.
So that's it. So there's one. But how about spinach? How about lettuce? How about arugula? Arugula gives you 8. Listen to this, 8 times more. And arugula is a weed, but you can buy it at every store now on the planet and organically. Always organically. Number 2. To fill yourself up, this is what I had to do, and we've watched be effective here. When you give up the heavy things, the meats, the chicken, the fish, the cream puffs, whatever the heck we're eating. Start eating nuts and seeds. But even the healthiest people here with the best digestive tracts, including me, it's hard to digest them. So go out and buy a $20 coffee grinder. That's what they cost. Throw in your almond, your filbert. A great one is Brazil nuts for the extraordinary minerals that they have.
Yeah, Vitamix is good for that too.
Vitamix is good for that if you have one. High-speed blenders that are great. And start to eat these. Powder them on top of the salad, or put some water in with onions and garlic and make them into a burger or a loaf or a croquette. We have, every month, we have new data on how nuts reverse and prevent disease. Now, the only two nuts I'm going to tell you to avoid are ones everyone loves, peanuts. Peanuts have an aflatoxin on it, causes cancer. We've known that for 55, 60 years. And cashews, because cashews almost are never raw. They have very hard shells that they're in, and to open it up and to extract them, they heat the shell. But there's no law that says post-heating has to be marked. If you don't, preheating has to be marked. Post-heating has to be marked. So they're nuts and seeds. It will fill you up. And the third thing I want to tell you is, rather than what to eat, but eat less and eat at certain times of the day. There's a film that we're part of that was well done. It's on fasting, and it's on the Amazon Prime network. And it's just called Fasting. So put it in there and watch it. And they go to Dr. Longo, who's at USC in California, University of Southern California, who's the premier researcher on not eating. And what they found is, even if you don't change a person's diet to a good diet, if you have them not eat in the early morning and not eat at night, they get much healthier. Now, we're going to add some caveats that are going to make this important. How about if you eat your largest meal of the day that is plant-based, that have the nuts, they have the seeds in it? The first thing you say, I'm not going to get everything I need. The opposite is true. There is no plant, listen to what I'm saying, not one plant that doesn't have all the amino acids in it. That's what we know. Now, maybe you're going to need, if you're a bodybuilder like I am, maybe you're going to need more protein. So you just eat more plants. The second thing we know is that everyone ate this way before. It's not like we're geniuses and we're telling you what to do. 150 years ago, everyone went to bed when the sun went down and they got up when the sun came up. Nobody was eating at 11 o'clock at night, watching the Late Show.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, and as you say all of that, what's exciting for people and what they should understand is that, yes, it is also filling to eat this way.
Yes.
And if you are still having cravings, like you're still hungry, these cravings are addictions. They're not actually hunger. These are addictions that you have to foods and things that your body is wanting because of what it thinks it's going to give you, but it's not really necessary. And that's why fasting is important for people versus dieting, but fasting and cleansing, much different lifestyle and headspace. That's another podcast. We're not going to have time to get into all of that.
We could do 10 of these. We could have our show together.
Right. Absolutely. No question about it. And so with that, I want to just shift gears. We don't have a lot of time left. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes. I want to talk about one of our other guests previously, Dr. Wolfson, who's a medical doctor, the paleocardiologist, good friend of mine. We talked about how we have an entire healthcare ladder that is leaning against the wrong wall. It's moving in the wrong direction. And people like you and I, and all of our colleagues around the world, I know the chiropractors that we work with around the world, the nutritionists, people like you at Hippocrates, all your circle of influence around the world, we work together, who have a completely different perspective. Yeah. And in my opinion, the correct perspective for quality of life and longevity. And people like you and I, and our people that are listening that want to go in this direction, they find themselves being attacked sometimes or criticized for their choices about going in this new direction, which is not really new. It's much more ancient than the current direction of drugs and pharmacology.
That's right.
Talk to us about what can people do to stay strong against the pharma fanatics, the drug addiction that is happening, that's being bullied and pushed on us out in the world. We're being bombarded by billions of dollars worth of misinformation and false advertising and things like that. What can an individual do to stay strong?
Well, the most important is to go back to Socrates. He said it better than I can. Know thyself. And let me repeat this. know thyself. Once you have a complete value-driven life, that you're not going to change your values. There are certain things, frankly, I'm going to tell you the truth, I would die for, because I just believe so much in these things. And that's what's lacking in our humanity today. People change like the weather changes. People don't have values. They're willing to be corrupted by the nonsense, and you are correct, billions of dollars from the drug and the food industries. We have one objective: to profit off your pain and suffering, to get you sick so you go to the pharmaceutical drug, etc. I don't think doctors are bad. When I was young and prejudiced and naive, I used to think, I think doctors all get into it for the right reason when they're 18, 19, and then they didn't realize that their education was actually to become glorified pharmacists.
Well, and who's running their continuing education seminars? At every seminar that they go to renew their license, they're all being run by the latest drug, the latest medication, the pharmaceutical companies. And you know, I think it's important to have this discussion. You talked about the mindset that people have to have in order to live at a very high level. Where you get your information from and being strong in those areas is so important. And you brought up some things that you would die for. Yes. I think the reason why we are kindred spirits, you talked about passion. That passion comes from such a deep belief in what we're doing.
Yes. Number
one, and a strong commitment to people to get the right content and information out there, that maybe we would even be willing to die for it and go to war for it, which we kind of do every day to support the people like our listeners who are with us today.
I mean, you know, really, when I was a boy, the doctor that came to my house, we loved this man. We'd hug him and kiss him.
Hey, Dr. Gorelick, and that was our guy.
Yeah, these were doctors for the right reason. Not to say doctors today aren't, but somehow they get corrupted. I mean, they're overwhelmed. They have tsunamis of paperwork to fill out.
And misinformed, not just corrupted, but misinformed, the ladder leaning against the wrong wall. Good people, but you know, the ladder's against the wrong wall.
I love that picture, by the way. When you said that, I'm going to use that. So
yeah, Stephen Covey, that's his quote, by the way. Give him credit. God rest his soul.
That is, yeah. So the last thing I'll say is no matter how corrupted you have been, no matter how lost you possibly are, you are not a leaf blowing in the autumn winds. You are the trunk of the tree, and you're well rooted, and you come from a place of extraordinary possibilities. I mean, I watch people reverse stage 4 cancers, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, mental illness, easy things like heart disease and diabetes. They're not even diseases. These things should go away in very short order. And what's that take? It takes that rooting. It takes you understanding that we're not feeble people that have to run to you, the chiropractor, or the doctor for every answer. We're part of the solution, but we're not the solution. You're the solution. That's it. And so people like you, when you get people in, you say, okay, I'm going to help you get your spine, which is incredibly important in this picture.
Hey, Hippocrates, you brought him up. He also said, look well to the spine for the cause of disease.
Well, you know it. I mean, this guy was, if we had doctors like that were multi-talented, we'd all be better off. But the fact, I know when they leave your office, you're going to say to them, here's how you have to walk. Here's how you have to sit. You don't say, keep coming back to me so I can see you 18,000 times. You want them to not come back to you. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. People ask, you know, what are you selling people on with the 100-year lifestyle? You know, what are you selling? And really, it's information. I mean, the reality of it is we're selling people on themselves. We want people to be sold on themselves. Come on, you have that potential within you. And hey, this has been fun. We could go on for decades. We probably will. You look great, by the way. I really appreciate you coming by. Give us a quick commercial on Hippocrates. How can they find you, and what are you doing there so people can seek you out?
We're the original lifestyle center, began in 1956. Thank God we moved down to West Palm Beach, Florida. We're on a beautiful resort on acreage, 60 acres here, and we welcome people from around the world. As we sit here, we're having doctor days where we invite doctors from around the world. We give them an impactful 4 days of education. We have guests from 21 countries here as we sit right now. And half the people that come here come to prevent disease and aging. So they are 100-year-long livers, and they come here to prevent those problems. And the other half have some kind of a problem, everything from small things to things of magnitude. And you can get a hold of us by getting on the internet and looking up Hippocrates. We're a nonprofit, so it's Hippocrates Institute.org. So I'll spell it because it took me 3 years of working here. HIPPOCRATES Institute, continue on, INST. So HIPPOCRATES INST.org. And then you can give us a call too, and we have programs that start every single Sunday. We have programs specific to cancer, specific to diabetes, weight loss. We have the most effective weight loss academy on our campus here in the world. And so it's been a pleasure to be with you today and to get to have your listeners listen to both of us. And I hope we can do this, as you said, again.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I appreciate always being able to be with you. You're sharing your expertise, and we got a world to change, man. And a lot of people who are getting excited about the possibilities that come with the greatest opportunity in their life, which is their extended lifespan.
Now, let me give you one last tip.
Okay.
The other night I went to see a new documentary. It's going to October 1st hit the airwaves. It was in theaters, 1,000 theaters, put together by James Cameron, the great producer, called The Game Changer. So if any of you have questions about what you should be eating and not eating, watch for The Game Changers on October 1st. God bless you all. Be well.
Beautiful. Thanks a lot, Brian. Appreciate you so much. And hey, thanks for listening, everybody. Remember, your 100 is coming. You make the call. Thank you so much for joining us on the 100 Year Lifestyle Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have topics that you want us to cover, people you want us to interview, maybe you have some stories that you want to share, stories of yourself, loved ones, people in your life, we would love to hear from you and share your story. Please email us at my100@100yearlifestyle.com. And remember, nobody wants to get to 100 or even 50, 60, or 70 for that matter, crippled, broke, and alone. So please share the 100 Year Lifestyle, all of our podcasts, social media pages, website, with your family, friends, and coworkers so they can take this journey with you. And until next time, adjust your lifestyle. Live your best life today and every day on the road to a sensational century. Dr. Plasker, signing off.